All right, folks. So what if the government decides that your extra bedroom, it's not yours anymore? And they will call it the spare bedroom tax. We'll get into that. But before you freak out, it's not implemented in Canada yet. Maybe it might never be, but they're talking about it in Australia. They're talking about it in the United Kingdom, England. So we get the picture, right? If they're talking about it and trying to implement the spare bedroom tax somewhere else, guess what? Maybe Canada is next. I would like to add on top of that, there have been talks like that they want to build 500,000 homes and all of that stuff. Like I have made a video on top of that. It is next to impossible with our current structure and what we are currently having in Canada to build that, right? The record year was 1974 with like 250 plus thousand homes or units that particular year. Just to remind you, during the pandemic, where everything was rigged perfectly, right? Money, people, it was just on like never before. We did not break that record of 1974. And then on top of that, we're having the decline of craftsmanship and people like electricians, plumbers, and all of that stuff. So just let's take that into consideration. So by adding more units, maybe they're thinking about this per bedroom tax, right? How will they implement it? What does this look like? We'll get into this. So let's just get right into the video and let's talk about that. All right, so what if the government decides that the extra bedroom isn't yours anymore? So they will call it the spare bedroom tax in the next housing battle we could actually face, right? So what they're calling it is fairness for renters. So how does this actually apply to you as a homeowner versus somebody renting? Like that's another issue that we will definitely have. It's not if or but, it will be there, right? So the actual concept. So tax people with empty bedrooms, fairness for renters, housing equity, and then it's another way to grab revenue from homeowners, right? So they might be able, right, to go to your house and to actually ask these questions. Do you have an extra spare bedroom? How many people live in your household, right? And we have these every, I don't know how many years, every 4 or 5 years, like a census, like population and all that stuff. They knocked on my door. I'm sure they knocked on your door too. And you have to fill out a particular form stating how many people live in that particular house or unit or condo or whatever it is, right? So obviously they need that information to be accurate. So why not continue doing that and see if you, my dear friends, have an extra bedroom that you maybe today call it an office, and we'll get into that part a little bit later, that you could maybe house another family, right? And you say, well, I don't want to do that, right? I worked hard for my house, and we'll get into that as well. And you cannot do that, right? Like just period, you cannot do that. And the question is, I agree with you, but there are ways of increasing that tax for it not to make sense, right? So for that particular home not to make sense because it'll be too expensive to afford on your own, that you might not have other options, but we'll get into that as well. So who is targeted here? So couples with kids, empty nesters, people who work from home with an office, retirees with a lifetime home. So what do I mean by that? Let's dissect it quickly. Like couples with kids, who knows? Maybe you have a 5 bedroom, you have 1 kid, right? So you'll be targeted. Like another family needs to move in there, right? Those are the talks that are going on in Australia and the UK and stuff like that, right? So empty nesters. Hey, look, I live by myself. I want to afford it. I can afford it. I want to work 3 jobs in order to afford it. But now you're in that bubble where you will not be able to maybe in the future go down that route, and they will tax you based on that particular square footage or house size or bedroom count, right? People who work from home with an office, right? So yes, we went back and forth. Remember, like we were working in offices, then we started working in homes, right? During the pandemic and stuff like that. A lot of people got used to that because it did cut the traveling cost. It did cut a lot of the things in between, whether people were productive or not. I really don't know, right? I guess it depends on an individual. But like this is what it is. So maybe at this moment you have a business and you're working from home and you tell your accountant, hey, look, I have a office space and I want to have a tax write-off, which is legal, it's possible, everybody's doing it, it's fine. But what if down the road that will be a burden and that will not be possible anymore, or the tax on that particular office at home will be ludicrous that you say, well, it's not really worth it, right? So at that moment, that room becomes unoccupied or free. And then at that moment, another spare bedroom tax is implemented for you to say, oh my gosh, right? And then we get into retirees and lifetime homes. People, maybe had good jobs, maybe they worked all their life, maybe they can afford after their retirement to actually live in an estate home. Nothing wrong with that, right? However, maybe all these empty walls need to be filled, right? Remember the 500,000 units or homes, maybe they're implying in one of these retirees estate homes that they will have 2 or 3 families per unit in order to occupy that space, right? I don't know. I cannot even imagine, to be honest with you, how that would look like. How do we qualify? Who gets to live with who? How does this work? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, is it gonna be an app and you like say yes or no, or like it's just crazy. But let me go into something else. Do you remember, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago? I remember when I was growing up, right? My parents were telling me, please do not talk to strangers. Please don't get into a car with a stranger. Like that's a big no, right? Like even a taxi. Like do you remember like cabs or taxis back in the day? Like my parents would freak out. Oh my gosh. Like you're going into a taxi, someone that you don't know will drive you. Do you understand what I'm saying? And today we have kids and what they do, they go on an app, order a Uber or Lyft or whatever one of these apps, and that particular vehicle with a stranger in their car drives your kids normally nowadays. I mean, we're not even raising these questions anymore. Who is this person? Like all they have to do, I'm assuming, like upload their ID and have a vehicle insurance, and all of a sudden they're driving an Uber, right? So like you see what I'm saying? It's like, and now like this raises a question when they say, well, the spare bedroom tax cannot be implemented. Well, who said? Of course it can be implemented. If it's needed, wanted, yes, it can be implemented, right? So how we are going to kind of deal with that is another question, but this is what it is. So what's the government spin on this, right? So it's all about making housing more efficient. That's the tagline, making housing more efficient. Encourages downsizing. So it encourages downsizing. Helps renters and younger buyers. I don't see how, right? Like if they're moving, or maybe like 5 families are buying one house and they're, or 3 families, and then they're sharing it. Otherwise, like I don't see how. A hidden wealth tax. I think this is like the bottom. It's that taxation onto taxation, right? So what Canadians should ask: why not fix immigration plus expired visas first? So this is the question somebody asked. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know, but it's a solid question. Why not punish real estate fraud and speculation instead? Very good question, right? I mean, there's a lot of benefits in fixing the fraud, right? I made a video on top of that, how a brokerage right here in Toronto, GTA, took $10 million out of a trust account. It's a trust account. Do you understand what I mean? How can someone take something from a trust account? But another topic, another video which I already made, I link it at the end of this video. Why not address the migration pipeline through universities that pushes demand? All right, so that's a solid question, right? So we understand, we need education, we need good education, we need good establishments and all that stuff. But all of these universities and colleges and whatnot, they're in it for the money as well, right? They're looking count of students and these tuitions and all of that stuff, right? Like if you pass, you will get the certificate. However, you need to pay. So they're in business of making money as well. Why not build faster instead of taxing bedrooms? That's a solid question. As mentioned before, yes, we can build it, but there's all this red tape all over the place. Have you ever tried applying for anything nowadays, right? Like if a tree is protected, maybe not a good example. Let's give another one. Let's say you want to add a small addition to your home and you have the parameter, you have a lot, you have everything. You will jump through so many loops. That red tape through government is going to cost you more to get that licensing done than the actual build itself, maybe, right? And then on every corner you see one of these franchise fast food restaurants just pop like mushrooms, right? So it raises the questions like what's the priority here, right? So we have to definitely sort this out. What Canadians should ask, we went through that. Voices of punishment. So, voices of punishment. Start with politicians' homes first. I got this into my comments when we were kind of talking about that, and I said, what would have happened? And somebody raised their hand and they said like, hey, look, like why not start with politicians' homes first? Let us share their bedrooms first, and then we'll get into the public if the system actually works. So that was actually interesting, right? So define a bedroom. That was another topic on that round table that we were discussing it. You can't even define a gender nowadays, right? So somebody mentioned that. Yes, like you would have to agree, right? Like things are shifting so quick, so much that we don't know. What is a bedroom? Is it a den? Is it a bedroom? What is considered? So technically, a bedroom is considered having a door and having a closet, right? So that's by definition in real estate, that's considered a bedroom. Now, in one of these newer even condos, they don't even have windows, believe it or not, right? Like they have these weird sliding doors that kind of open on one side or both sides to kind of open the room, but it's still considered a bedroom, even without a window. Move people where exactly? So it was the question about the retirees and downsizing and all of that, that somebody raised the question, to ask the question and said, well, where would we move them? Like if they have an estate home, fine. So where are we going to put them? In these shoebox condos that are like 450 square feet? Like where do we put these retirees now, right? And how do we downsize them, right? And how happy is all of that move going to be? And how far is it going to be? Maybe it's not a problem pushing it, 8 hours north or east or west or whatever, but how happy are these people going to be, right? Because if they have communication with their kids and their grandkids and all of that stuff, like it's just weird. My home is not an investment property for politicians. Somebody raised their hand and they said like, look, like it's all good, man, but like, look, now you're tapping into my livelihood and fine. Like you got to do what you got to do maybe with taxes, but now you're deciding what's going to happen in my house. So the big picture, it's not about bedrooms. It's about control over private property, normalizing the idea, and state can decide how much space you're allowed to have. So somebody just stood up and said like, this is my belief. I believe it's not about the bedrooms. It's just controlling that foot, that square foot, or that land, or interior space, or whatever, right? At that point, I don't know, to be honest with you, like I thought about that. It's even scary to think about, right? Like I understand you're trying to fix one problem, but now you're intruding into 1,000 other issues and problems, right? So today is bedrooms, tomorrow is what's next. So ladies and gentlemen, that's a question for you. And another two more questions I have for you. This is the next possible housing battle. Are Canadians ready? Please comment below. As mentioned, in Australia and UK, England, there have been already talks. They're heavily talking about that. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is this fair, or is this only about control, taxes, and where we are heading in Canada? So please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.